Eyal Rosner heads up the Prime Minister's Fuel Choices Initiative, and I'd like to invite him up on stage now to tell us about the plan and how they're going to put it into action. Ladies and gentlemen, Eyal Rosner.
Well, first of all, I have to say thank you for everybody coming. It's really exciting to see you all here, and we welcome you. And what I'll try to do in the next 20 minutes is just try to explain the way we've tried to structure this program and how we can think we can take it forward. So we got a mission which basically in a nutshell, let's change the world, okay? Let's do something that will be so dramatic that will actually catalyze the world in a way that not only for Israel, but for the entire world. And obviously, you know, we're going to use what we have. And the first thought was how we're going to address it. So obviously there are what we call two ways. You can start the normal linear way, but you could also start by, building all sorts of mechanisms that will allow what we try to call it non-linear approach. So what I'll try to do here is to show you a little bit of the thoughts that we put behind and how we are trying to tackle both. There were a few basic assumptions that we put when we first started. The first one was the economic viability of the solution. Obviously, we saw what's happened in the solar market, where once the subsidies stopped, the market pretty much collapsed. And we want to avoid it, because eventually, government won't be able to subsidize everything for too long. We need economic solution. The other very important point was that it has to be environmentally better. And now there are discussions, whether it's 20% better, 30% better, 70% better. We're not going to get into that now, but we want to have a better solution. Now, what you see in this chart is basically the air pollution quality, what's called NOx emission, what actually we inhale on a daily basis came out of our cars. That's in Tel Aviv during Yom Kippur, which is a holiday. Nobody drives their car in that day. And what you see is very basic. When there are no cars, there is no pollution. Very simple. So I wonder if we can get that someday, because my office is on a main street in Tel Aviv, and I keep closing the windows all the time because of that. Anyway, so that's the second assumption that we put. And the third one was the fact that it's not our goal to pick a winner and decide which technology will be the best. And it's our goal to enable everybody and to kind of, let's say, be the enabler for the market to decide for itself. And obviously, as a government, there are some tools that we can do, especially on the bootstrap of new infrastructure. So what we have done afterwards is try to kind of analyze what the market has to offer. And let me try to elaborate a little bit on this chart, because what you see is a different technology, and not only the name of the technology, which on the left-hand side, I wonder where I should, oh, sorry, I've done something wrong. Yeah, here it is. But also, we've tried to analyze when each of these technologies will be available to the market on economic terms. Now, obviously, there are some shiftings. Some countries a little bit different. And again, it's not our way of looking in the world. It's just try to figure out whether or not there are technologies available and what we can do about that. And the results are basically there are three groups of technologies. One around natural gas, the other around electric mobility, and the third one is around biofuels. And what you can see that over the years we anticipate, and maybe we will be wrong, maybe some of the technology will come to the market faster than we anticipate, but at the end of the day, there are many solutions. And this is very important, and some of them are already available now, which is even more important. So the reality is that we have solutions, some of these solutions available now, and obviously there are kind of a local bias. We just heard about ethanol in Brazil. We know we have a large delegation of Chinese officials here, and they produce methanol from coal. We have countries like Sweden with a huge forestry business. And so there are many local approach, and everything is good in that respect. And also, we can implement the technologies now, which is very important, because one of the most problematic things in what we have done over the years in that respect is that we always promise the holy grail sometimes in the next 15, 20 years. But we want to start now, because once we start the change, then everything will look different. We need to have a quick wins in the end of the day. So we've started to analyze and try to think, what are the barriers for change? I mean, how come we never make the change? I mean, it's not we are not the first one to try to solve this problem, right? And we've kind of tried to build what we call acceptability index, which means let's try to bring together all the elements that prevent technology coming into the market, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's the total cost of ownership, whether it's just the acceptability because the market don't like it or like it, whatever. And we've tried to build this kind of index and try to analyze the transportation sector from different segments. So we've took the different segments of the transportation industry, and we've kind of built each one of these technology based on what we've thought it's appropriate for it. So, for example, if you look at the CNG, for example, it's probably make more sense to adopt it on a heavy-duty vehicles rather than a normal fleet, because you need less infrastructure. Usually, bus companies or large fleet of trucks, they can use one center for refueling, and also they consume much more oil than just private cars. So we have done it for all the different technologies. For example, you can see the electric mobility, which is at some areas become almost par with oil, in some are not. You can see the methanol, which seems to be a very good solution for privates because you can use the current infrastructure and because it's going to be cheaper. And obviously, the last one is biofuel, which at the moment is not fully competitive, but in some areas, like for example in airplanes, this is the only solution out there. So looking in this chart, which I know could be a little bit confusing, we've tried to kind of mark where we should try to help the market help himself, basically. And what you see is that, as I said, some segments have some technology which are relevant for them. So we come up with this, kind of chart, which again, it's not 100% scientific, but the idea is that we believe that in these specific segments, these technology can prevail because they're economically better and because the acceptability could be much higher. And we like to help them all. We have, not necessarily the fact that we had only one fuel in the past means that we will have one fuel in the future. We can have more than that. And that is exactly what we try to do here, is basically help everybody in what they need. So I just want to show you, for just this, as a short example, you don't have to look at all the numbers in the chart, but just look at these two numbers. Basically, what you see is about 3.5% of the vehicles in Israel actually consume about 24% of the fuel. So if you can provide obviously the regulation, but also the infrastructure for these 3%, you can have a major influence on the consumption of oil. And this is exactly our plan. We're going to provide them with the optionality. They won't have to choose, but this optionality means that they will have cheaper solution. So this is just one example. Obviously, we have more, but I don't want to run through everything that we have there. But this is the idea. Let's provide the solutions to whoever can use it in a proper way, and he will make money out of it, and we will have the other type of fuels available. And from this chart, what we plan to do is try to implement methanol in a private vehicle and CNG in the heavy duty, and etc. So we have few tools that we can use. Obviously, pilots is one of them. We already have more than 10 pilots, different types, whether it's electric bus, methanol cars, all sorts of different types of technology, because in the end of the day, in transportation, you have to use the vehicles to see how it's actually working, which is very important. The other part is obviously the standardization, which is essential to make it happen. And in that respect, the discussion earlier was very important because there are ways to work together globally to kind of work together on regulation and to see what we can do in order to enhance this process. The third point, which is very important, is tax or subsidies or what we can do in that respect. This fiscal tool is very powerful. In Israel, for example, we have a tax regime which is in favor for cars who are cleaners. So if you drive electric car, you pay 8% tax on your car. If you drive one of these heavy SUVs that consume a lot of oil and very dirty, you will pay 90%. And you got everything in between. So the idea is that in addition to the fact that the cars have incentives to go cleaner, we are putting another layers of tax on the gasoline itself. On average, gasoline tax in Israel is 100%. What we will do is we have difference. So, for example, natural gas as a cleaner, as a safer fuel, will have lower tax than gasoline. And hopefully by then we'll create additional fiscal incentive to the public to consume what we believe is a safer fuel. And of course the infrastructure, and here what we do, again, eventually we will let the market decide and do the most of the work, but we are trying to help, at least at the beginning, on the bootstrap level, so we can kind of make the whole thing start. This is how we see, again, this is not mandatory, of course. This is what we anticipate if we do the right thing on the right time. We see a large penetration of natural gas-based solutions, obviously followed by electric solutions and biofuels. What you do see is that in the long term, we believe that we'll see more and more cleaner solutions that will become cheaper and hopefully more accessible. This is also creates great contribution for our economy. And by the calculation that we've made, if we'll succeed, we actually gain about 1 percentage point to the GDP on a yearly basis, which is obviously phenomenal and helps a lot when you come to the government with all sorts of ideas and investments, and you show them that the results are very, very good. Okay, so now go a little bit, we have a couple of more minutes to talk about what I call the non-linear approach, which means that in addition to pushing what we already have, we need to think maybe a little bit different outside of the box and see what we can do in order to bring new technologies, new ideas out there. And what we try to do is basically build a funnel. The funnel starts with a very basic research, goes to industrial R&D, pilots, a lot of support in startups. You see some of it outside today, and all the way to commercialization of the product. And we have certain tools that works with each one of these layers, I would say. And obviously, we believe and we are trying hard to combine it with international collaboration with other countries. There's a lot of knowledge out there, and hopefully we'll be able to align everybody together. Some of the tools, just for you to kind of grasp, we have, I would divide it to the financial tools and the non-financial tools, which is basically how we can support, whether it's entrepreneurs or companies, regulation and everything. What you see outside is part of our, what we call EcoMotion community, which is basically, let's help entrepreneurship in Israel move to a new field, which we never had before, car industry. And this is actually amazing to see how quickly people are moving from one field to another once they see there's a good, first of all, good reason and obviously money, which is important. But we also support them in other ways. We do the right connections with international bodies, etc., and that is very important. Also, we have all sorts of grants for small companies, for large companies. We put up a $100 million co-invest fund. And all of it together should have some kind of an ecosystem which will help crazy as possible idea to come to the market. And we try to be as plural and as open as possible for every type of idea, technology that come out there. And we are willing to test them. We are willing to invest as long as there is someone that comes along with us. Because again, this is not our job to decide whether it's a good solution or a bad solution. It's our job to create the environment to make it happen. That's it. Thank you very much. Question?
Eyal, since you've finished with a full 5 minutes to spare, which is very, very un-Israeli of you, just a couple of questions. Professor Kendall, unless I misheard him, and he or one of his people, correct me if I did, suggested, I think, that CNG, compressed natural gas, had a problem for Israel because of security concerns. I'm guessing because the tank could explode more easily, perhaps more than a normal car. Does that if I understood that is the case correctly, does that reduce the viability of that as a fuel? Because you had it quite prominent in one of your slides just before.
Yes. Well, we hope that we'll be able to solve it. This is something that we try to learn from outside, from other countries. And what we've realized is that nobody actually tries to put a bomb under a bus of natural gas just as an experiment. So we're going to do it. And hopefully afterwards, based on our analysis and calculation, we think we'll be able to overcome this problem and let heavy-duty trucks. So heavy-duty trucks has no problem at the moment to start. But we are talking mainly about buses and public transportation. We believe we're going to overcome that.
Okay. And my other question from what you said before about the taxes on cars. Now,
yes.
Anyone who lives here in Israel knows that cars here are about double the price of elsewhere, certainly many tens of percentage points more expensive.
The average is 70%. By
all right, 70% average. And you said electric cars have just an 8% tax?
8%, correct.
I don't see, all things being equal, you'd expect to see almost all new cars being electric, because that would mean that they'd be more or less the same price given the tax differential.
Not really, because even now, with the 8% tax, the price of electric car is higher.
That much higher?
Plug-in high fuel is 20%, plug-in hybrid, hybrid is 30%. Still, within this tax environment, the price of plug-in is a bit more expensive than a normal car. So the buyers are the ones who are either the heavy users, which is, again, important. But what we are trying, there's also a lot of, as I said, there is a market acceptance to this. Because what you see, there's a lot of people who still wait to see that this technology is available or valid or whatever. And we believe that over time, it will become more and more accessible. And the price of batteries is coming down, which is, again, very important to the whole ecosystem of electric mobility.
Thanks, Eyal. I have one question. I think this is probably our last one. It strikes me that for the economic viability of electric vehicles, you need lower priced or as low priced electricity as you can get. How critical is EV distribution in Israel? How much is that contingent on this whole natural gas boom resulting in lower electricity prices for consumers, and how can you expedite that?
Well, obviously, it's still, when you talk about electric cars, we're still not there. I wish we were, but we're still not there in terms of the cost, of the total cost of ownership. If you take the costs of the car, if you take the fact that people still have the range anxiety and everything that relates to that. So there are, a small group of people willing to take the risks, but most of the people still don't. Natural gas obviously reduced the cost of the electricity, but the electricity, let's say the refueling of electrics in an electric car is still a marginal part of the total equation, which is the cost of the car, the infrastructure, the range anxiety, and everything else.
And since we still have a minute and a half left, I'm just going to throw one more in. So given that the price of electric, in the UK and other European countries, there's a bit of a subsidy. You might get, say, for example, £5,000 off a Nissan Leaf. So it's a little bit more in tune with normal internal combustion engine cars. Is the Israeli government considering, perhaps, as that being a means to get more lower polluting vehicles, electric vehicles on the road, to make them competitive?
First of all, by building such a tax regime, you are giving this $5,000 basically, because you just take lower tax. Instead of a normal car, which pays 70% tax, you take only 8%. So that's a lot of money. It's just the other way around, the same equation. But what we are trying to do now is build the infrastructure around. So we'll have enough stations to basically charge your car, everything that relates to, there's a lot of regulation which never been, nobody thought about electric car 30 years ago when they done all the regulation around housing, and where you can put just, the charging station, stuff like that. So there's, in addition to the price of the car and the fact that people need to, look about Tesla. Tesla is more expensive. People still buy it because they like the chic of it and they like the fact that it's clean and whatever it's come to, it's a package. But people who drive Teslas have a lesser fear of range anxiety, which they have on a normal Leaf or whatever. So I think that over time we will overcome that, but it's going to take a while.
I think they also have low range anxiety because I think the new model has about 400 kilometers or something range, or 400-mile range. But we'll hear from one company tomorrow that hopes to resolve that. But for now, just want to thank Eyal Rosner for that very informative talk. Eyal Rosner.